All right, good morning, guys. Hey, Joan, thanks for joining us here today on the stream inside Fox 5 DC's digital newsroom. We are gearing up for the big March for Our Lives, guys, tomorrow, which we will be streaming right here on this platform on YouTube and on Facebook from 10 to about 4 p.m. As long as really it lasts, we're going to have cameras out there downtown in DC on Pennsylvania Avenue. And already, guys, students from Parkland, but also high schools across the nation have descended on DC to be part of this movement. We believe it's going to look a little bit like this. This is some footage from the walkout from last week or so, or 10 days ago, which showed March 14th, 1 month after the Parkland shooting, students protesting and whatnot in front of the White House and also marching out of their own high schools. And we have continued sort of video coverage of that. There you go. There you can see one of the walkout kind of aerial views. But we know this is going to be on a much grander scale tomorrow. They're thinking 500,000 or so plus students are going to be here to take part in this march. So we are really excited to give you guys the opportunity to catch this stream totally on our digital platform. We're going to have reporters right there embedded with some of the students at some of the checkpoints. We're going to have the speeches on camera as well. We'll bring all of that to you live. But this morning, we had a chance to have two of the Parkland students actually who are two of the sort of prime organizers of this event. They've been very outspoken on this. They sat down with some of our morning anchors on our morning show, and they talked a little bit about their platform on this and their thoughts behind the march. So I'm going to roll that video for you guys now before we get into some other stuff of the day.
Our friends and our teachers died, and we're here to try to make a change, and you're not even going to consider.
Do you think they're like, well, they're high school students, what could they possibly know? Did they brush you off that way?
Absolutely. I lobbied Congress with a smaller group from the Never Again movement, and we were confronted a lot with it. It seemed like we were being dismissed to a point, but that at that point we've realized that even if they try to dismiss us, they're not going to be able to continue doing that because we're here, we're loud, we're marching on Washington. It's going to be a lot harder to ignore us when we're presenting ourselves in such an intense way. So whatever amount of dismissal that we're receiving, we have to keep working through it.
What have you talk about how much you've learned in the last month in dealing with this, whether it be Congress or fellow students or adults or strangers on Twitter that are firing back at you. When it comes to the position that you're taking on this, and then you hear from people who say, don't mess with my Second Amendment. Maybe they take the opposite view of you. Maybe students that are in your school who take the opposite view of you. How do you bridge that gap right now in listening to others? Because this is the criticism that, quite honestly, lawmakers get, that people have their view, they stick to it, and nobody comes together. Are you able to take lessons from that and say, look, we can come together in some way?
Well, when I spoke to legislators, that was a thing that they confronted, is that we haven't necessarily been able to compromise. We haven't been able to reach across the aisle here, and that is something that we are absolutely willing to do. We are willing to compromise with everyone, but they have to be open to compromise as well. And to be hard-headed and to just say, you can't take away my guns isn't reasonable, because that's not what we're fighting for. But we know that there's a lot of compromise to be done here, because obviously not everything that we say can get passed immediately, but we know that we're going to keep fighting for those things to get passed no matter what it takes.
Are you all encouraged by President Trump that he can and will make a difference in this?
I'm not sure about will, but he can make a difference in this. A lot of his supporters do support the Second Amendment and are mostly against us, even though this is a nonpartisan issue. It's gun control shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be whether you want to save lives or not issue. And I think Donald Trump can make a change. It's on whether or not he will.
Have you been surprised by how political of an issue it does become? You're in a school where you lost classmates, you lost people who were part of that school, and as much as you might say this should be a common sense approach to things, were you surprised by the politicalness of it?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it's one of those things that you see in the country all the time, these issues that shouldn't be so polarizing become polarizing. Gay marriage should not be a polarizing issue, but it became one. And it's something that we had come to expect. It's something that we'd come to realize. Even before fighting this fight, we'd seen it with other school shootings. We'd seen it with other issues. Because we watch, we pay attention to the news, so we knew that we were going into this storm of criticism, this storm of left versus right, even though that wasn't what we were focusing on. And we were ready for it. I think we were as ready as we could have been for it.
One last thing, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it. You had to live through that day. It's been more than a month now. Do you still revisit that day in your mind when all of these issues continue to surface and you continue to talk about it?
I know some people are taking therapy. I think that's and grief counseling, and I think it's very much needed. It is kind of surreal at the point. We've been so distracted and so busy with our schedules now that we don't necessarily have the time to like reminisce on it. But sometimes it'll creep up on us, and sometimes it'll just bring us down. But we got to remember that we're doing this for them, and we're doing this so that they don't die in vain, and so no one else has to.
I am so proud of you. I really am.
Thank
It
you.
brings tears to my eyes to think that such young people could really make a change in this society. Keep fighting the fight. And
really just an amazing interview right there in our studio, guys, on Fox Morning this morning. That was Allison and Steve's voice interviewing them. Meanwhile, as so many students are already here in DC for this march, like I mentioned, that we'll be streaming all of tomorrow, so don't forget to join us for that. A lot of those students are up on Capitol Hill today making a statement, protesting in some manner, making signs, doing everything they can, and a lot of them were with some lawmakers this morning outside of the Capitol to talk about gun safety and gun violence. In fact, one of them was Senator Bill Nelson from Florida, and among a few others who held this presser to demand action for gun safety. And this just happened a few moments ago. They're using the hashtag March for Our Lives, so that whole message and everything about this march tomorrow is really pervading a lot of the events and the action that's taking place today. So just a day before all of this goes down tomorrow morning. So let's check into that news conference that was just a few moments ago here with some of those lawmakers, and here's what they had to say.
Gives me more determination. And as we try to learn from this tragedy and move on and not make these kinds of mistakes in the future, we find that it is very difficult to change entrenched ways. A little bit was done last night at 1:30 in the morning in the passage of the funding bill for all of the appropriations, because there were a couple of provisions put in there that were first steps, fix NICS, and a provision of Safe Schools Act. But that's just the first step in a road of a very long journey. And so there's a long way to go. And that's what these students are here for. This long road certainly starts with a universal background check for the acquisition of a gun. And we need to get the assault rifles and the large capacity magazines off the streets. Well, thank you. And I know that's what you're here for. And what we hope is that by you being here today, you are demanding it, and we hope to see your action, your marching today, put action into eventual legislation. We're delighted to have Gabby Giffords and her husband Mark. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the congressman from Broward County, Congressman Ted Deutsch.
Thanks. Thanks, Senator Nelson. I'm really thrilled to be here. After the horrific tragedy of Marjory Stoneman Douglas, students decided that they weren't going to simply allow this tragedy to become another statistic in a long line of horrific tragedies, horrific acts of gun violence. And they started a movement, and they decided there was going to be a march, and we knew that it would be different. And for everyone who is standing here this morning with this small but representative group of the students who will be flooding into the city of Washington, we know it's different. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the energy that we feel already this morning. And thank you for the change that you're going to bring to our country. It's an honor to be here with Congresswoman Giffords and Mark, Kelly. I'm proud to stand here with Senator Nelson and Senator Klobuchar. In order for us to accomplish all of the things that we need to do to bring about change, it's going to require a team. And this team is going to only continue to grow. It's been now slightly more than 5 weeks since the horrific mass shooting at Douglas. The conversation continues. It didn't go away, and the fight lives on, and the fight is really just beginning. The headlines were sadly, no different than we're so accustomed to seeing the acts of violence, gun violence that take place in every part of our country, in cities and suburbs, in schools, at concerts, in churches, and in our communities. We have an important role to play in ensuring that no student should ever be afraid to walk down the hallways of their school or to walk down the streets of their neighborhoods. Parents shouldn't have to worry about sending their kids off to school in the morning and worry whether they're going to come home at the end of the day. It is our job, and everyone working in that building behind us, to pass laws to keep our communities safe. We all know what's happening tomorrow. The Stoneman Douglas students have energized a nation. High school students, college students from around the country will be marching here in Washington and in more than 800 cities all across this country and across the globe. What Congress passed yesterday, as Senator Nelson mentioned, was but a small first step. The Stop School Violence Act, Fix NICS, lifting the ban on research into gun violence, those are worthwhile steps to take. But the march tomorrow will remind people that universal background checks that have the support of over 90% of the American people need to have a vote on the floor of the House and Senate, and that high-capacity magazines and weapons of war should have no place in our communities. Congress did more yesterday than they've done in recent memory, and they did it because of these students and the movement that they've started. But if the Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader really want to honor the memories of the lives tragically lost at Stoneman Douglas and throughout our country, they will do what is necessary to stand up to the gun lobby and stand up for the families and for these kids. It's my honor now to introduce Dimitri Hoth, who is a constituent of mine. Dimitri, coming up. He's a student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Dimitri is a Floridian of Brazilian descent. He's always had a fascination with languages and foreign cultures. Multilingual, he plans to merge this passion with his interest in business to pursue a dual degree in international business and marketing at Florida International University next year. On February 14th, while Dimitri was in his math class, a gunman opened fire in his school, and after this indescribable tragedy, he, a friend, and a former teacher created a nonprofit called Students Speak Up, which aims to promote civic engagement among United States youth. There is no better example of the youth of our country becoming engaged than this march, and we're fortunate that Dimitri and so many other students have joined us here this morning. Dimitri, I'm happy to turn it over to you. Thank you.
First and foremost, I would like to thank Giffords for their invaluable support during these most troubling of times. If it wasn't for them, 200 students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas would not be standing before you here today, including myself. But I would also like to thank them for their tireless and valiant efforts in fighting the epidemic of gun violence in America. I would like to thank former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords and Captain Mark Kelly for creating Giffords and having the courage to fight gun violence. I'm happy to be speaking with you all here today, on the day before the March for Our Lives, a day that will go down in the history books as the greatest show of student activism in our great nation. I know at times it may seem like our words simply spill from our mouths, fall through the cracks of our fingers, seep into the ground, and become lost. But it is in the ground where things grow. With determination, motivation, inspiration, passion, our words will sprout a stem of hope. And with that hope, it will grow into a strong tree, with roots that reach deep into the well of unity and solidarity and leaves that transpire the essence of justice. At times it may seem like we are alone, and our words endlessly echo throughout the halls as we speak our truths. But I urge you to look around right now at the sisters, brothers.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second.
Yeah.
We've got one quick announcement.
Hey,
if anybody, there's a brown bag in the bush here it's somebody's backpack. If anybody owns that backpack, we need to get it out of the bush, or the Capitol Police are going to make us all go away in a big hurry. So does anybody leave their backpack over here? Brown briefcase. Who owns the brown briefcase? Brown leather briefcase. Anybody? Yours? Okay. So let's go. Why don't you go over there and get it, and then we could keep this thing going. All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Back to you.
No, thank you. At times it may seem like we are alone, and our words endlessly echo throughout empty halls as we speak our truths. But I urge you to look around right now at the sisters, brothers, mother, fathers, and friends, all standing behind you with arms interlocked. They stand in solidarity with you. They support you. Your words will never go unheard, nor your actions unseen, for we all stand behind you. Frederick Douglass once said, "I prayed for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs." So I stand before you here today to invite you, students and parents from across America. Let us pray with our legs. Let us march in unison to the rhythm of justice. Because I say enough is enough. To you, Senator Marco Rubio, for dancing around our questions, enough is enough. To you, the National Rifle Association, for caring more about your guns in our lives, enough is enough. To you, the politicians in Washington, for not hearing our cries for justice, enough is enough. To you, President Donald Trump, for breaking your promises, enough is enough. We students have become victims of our government's glaring inaction, but never again. We have come here today to hold accountable politicians and their disturbing inaction. Never again will our voices, students' voices, be shunned into silence. Never again will we allow our government to become corrupt with manipulating interest groups. Never again will we allow one more school to have its sanctity stripped away and replaced with the sacrilege of gun violence. Never again will we allow a shattered community to erect memorials in front of schools. Never again will we allow parents to fear about their children never coming home. Enough is enough. Our words are seeds and our actions are the care they need to grow and prosper. But our government has been ripping our roots from the ground and depleting us of our nutrients. But never again. Students and parents of America, unite. Use your voices. They are powerful. They are worthy. Speak up and you will be heard. To the politicians of America, there is still time to do the right thing. Rectify your wrongdoings and actually do something to protect your constituents. Stop being coerced by the National Rifle Association. I urge you, propose meaningful gun safety laws, vote yea to bills that advance gun control, and sing along with us to the melody of justice. Never again, never again, never again. America, we are your future. Why won't you protect us? Thank you.
Dimitri, thank you for your powerful words. It's now my honor to introduce Keyshawn Newman from Chicago. Keyshawn is a student at Prospective Charter School where he's the president of his student council. He's also active in a number of other activities, including the baseball team and the board game club, and he's involved in the Brave Youth Leaders of St. Sabina. Brave is an organization fighting to stop the violence in communities and bring peace so people can live a safer and peaceful life no matter where they live. Keyshawn?
Hello, my name is Keyshawn Newman. I'm here today from Chicago, Illinois, and I attend Prospective Charter School. I'm also a part of Brave Youth Leaders of St. Sabina, which is a group of leaders fighting to stop and make aware of the gun violence in our community, working as one to create a safe environment for our kids and families, no matter where they live. Being a part of Brave brought me here today to tell my story firsthand. Just about 2 years ago, on May 2nd, 2016, my oldest stepbrother, Randall Young, was shot and killed in this senseless gun violence. not too far from our home. He was being a normal teenager. On that day, he was walking his girlfriend to the bus stop, and he was caught in a random gun shootout, which was the result of him losing his life. He was a loving brother and friend to all. He was our protector, and now his life has ended due to this senseless gun violence. Randall isn't another statistic. His life matters just like the lives lost in Parkland, Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, and so many other places in this country. But in Chicago, it's important for all of you to know the gun violence has become a tragic way of life, which shouldn't be the normal way of life. No, we don't have random mass shootings. We have daily shootings, which we pray every day for our safety to and from school and for our neighborhood. I want everyone here to know the reality of Chicago. Just in January 1st, 466 people have been shot and 88 of that 466 were killed. Sorry if you didn't catch that. Just since January 1st, 466 people have been shot and 88 of that 466 were killed. This is why I'm here, because we must stop letting this become the normal in Chicago. In this moment, the youth voice is rising across the country, and especially in Chicago. Our voices are loud, our voices are clear, and our voices are about to change history. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Keyshawn. I'm Amy Klobuchar. I'm the senator from Minnesota. We are used to this weather, Florida people. And I'm so honored to be here with Senator Nelson and Representative Deutsch, and of course, Gabby Giffords, my hero, who's been leading this fight with Mark for so long. And when I heard Keyshawn's story, that's how I got involved in this cause. As a prosecutor for 8 years in the Twin Cities, seeing a little girl gunned down doing her homework and taking on that case, a little boy gunned down on his front porch. It happens all over America. And now it happened in Parkland in such a tragic way. 17 people lost. And these young people today, you're here to give them the voice that they no longer have. You're here to be their advocates, to be their voices, and eventually to be their votes. That's what this march is about tomorrow. In the last month, we've seen students rise up like we've never seen before. Yes, in Florida, but in places like North Dakota and in Minnesota and in Arizona, all over this nation. And what they are asking for is pretty simple. And when kids ask it, it's harder to say no. When kids say, why can't we have a safer place? Why do you need assault weapons for hunting? Why can't you have universal background checks? And yes, as Senator Nelson and Congressman Deutsch described, we did do something last night. We got our Safe Schools bill passed, we got that Fix NICS bill passed, and they wouldn't have happened without these students standing behind us. But we know that is not enough. And for me, this has been a long, long journey. I realized as I stood with law enforcement officers, with cops as a prosecutor, asking for some limits on assault weapons, those police officers, it wasn't enough. We couldn't get it done. And when Gabby Giffords was gunned down in front of a supermarket doing her job and lived and went on to take on this cause all over the country, she would tell you no matter what she did, it still hasn't been enough. And those moms after Sandy Hook who had to sit in that fire station and wait until every last kid had come in, and pretty soon they knew that their babies would never come in again. Those moms, they took their grief and they brought it to this Capitol. They walked the halls of Congress. They simply asked for universal background checks. That was not enough. And when members of Congress who are elected from people in their states advocate for these bills, put forward common sense bills, work across the aisle, that has not been enough. Well, you know what is enough? When the students of this nation unite. When the students of this nation come to Washington from all over this country and ask these questions. But more than just ask them in front of the Capitol, they ask them of their parents, they ask them of their grandparents, they ask them of their neighbors. They say, we know that you like to hunt. That's important. It's sure important in my state. But why can't we have universal background checks? Why can't we do something to stem this gun violence? So this is the reckoning this weekend. This is the moment to ask those questions in a really big way. And we are so proud that students from Minnesota came. And in fact, Antiqua is with me. And she came here 17 hours on a bus, Gabby. That's what she did yesterday. She is from South High, and she's really good at math. And she wants to use those math skills to do really great things in the world. But right now, she's taken a little time off from her studies to say and stand up for these Parkland students that we lost and for the students across this country. I give you Antiqua. Thanks.
All right. Hello, my name is Antiqua Flint. I am 15 years old and I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I go to a Minneapolis public school. As she mentioned, I go to South High School. And there's plenty of people that walks around South every day that have guns that can easily come into my school and do the same thing that they did in Florida to my school. Guns put my whole community at risk. I've lost family members to gun violence. I also lost close friends to gun violence. I even lost close cousins to gun violence. It frightens me and it frustrates me. The solution to gun violence is not more guns. We need to pass sensible laws to keep guns out of dangerous hands. Students are stepping up to take on the NRA because our elected leaders are afraid to. I'm so proud to be able to be here and to speak to you guys, to let you guys know that this problem is happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota also, and that we're frightened for our life just as much as everyone else, and that it have to be something done about this. Every day I get up and I go to school wondering if I'm going to have a school shooting at my school any day. And I feel like I should not feel like that. None of my friends or family members should feel like they should be frightened to go to school. This is something that needs to be dealt with and need a compromise. And as one, we could all come together and we can make this happen. There's plenty of people that stand out by themselves and was able to make a difference. And just us coming together as students, and not only students, parents, friends, family members that have seen or heard of someone getting killed by gun violence, we could all come together and make a change. Thank you.
Thanks, Antiqua, thank you very much. And you're exactly right. Nobody should have to fear going to school. No one should have to fear walking in their communities. We're so grateful to the students for joining us, for sharing your very powerful and personal stories. And I think the students and Senator Klobuchar, Senator Nelson, and I are happy to take a few questions.
Congressman Joyce, do you feel that Congress has done enough? 37 days now since Trump and Douglas?
Well, of course not. Of course not. The legislation that we passed that has some small measures that are good bills that should have passed wouldn't have happened were it not for the students and the families and their advocacy. But as I said earlier, over 90% of the American people support universal background checks and cannot understand why it is that someone who buys a gun should be subject to a background check in a store, but not at a gun show or not online. It makes no sense to anyone, and yet we've not done that. We've not banned bump stocks yet. At the same time, yesterday, Senator Nelson introduced bipartisan legislation for gun violence restraining orders. I introduced bipartisan legislation to raise the age to buy a gun to 21. There are bipartisan efforts, but the efforts aren't sufficient. We need action, and we need these things to come forward for a vote. These students are counting on us, and for the hundreds of thousands of them who will be here, their voices are going to carry from the rally and the march down Pennsylvania Avenue right up into that building. I would just look at who's behind me. There are a couple of hundred people here. There are hundreds of thousands of students and millions of students around the country who have been inspired by the activism that they have seen. This is the I'm going to turn over to the students. This is the defining issue for them and their generation. This is not a march that will that they're going to participate in and then go back to their regular lives. Their regular lives, for the students who spoke today and for students all across the country who worry every day about whether they're going to be safe in their communities and their schools, this is their moment, and that's why it's going to be different. Perhaps not immediately, maybe not next week, but for students who will be going to the polls for the first time and voting on this issue, for their parents who have now become single issue voters, that is, do you stand with these kids and public safety, or do you stand with the gun lobby? That's the sea change that we're seeing, I'm sure, Senator Klobuchar.
And we have one student that we forgot to introduce here, so I'm going to have him answer this question for you, why the students can make a difference. But when you look at history here and you look at the difference that young people have made with civil rights in those marches, I don't think we would have gotten where we got. When you look at more recently, in the last decade, gay marriage and gay rights, it was the young people that started asking their parents, and then we started enacting laws state by state by state. When you look at Barack Obama, that no one thought could get elected because he had a funny name, well, it was the young people who started gathering around him. So there are a number of examples in recent history where the young people have made the difference. And one bill I wanted to add to the bills that Congressman Deutsch mentioned, and that's our domestic abuse bill that Gabby has worked on to simply make it easier to make sure that those who have been convicted of domestic abuse and stalking don't get a gun. That is bipartisan in the House, and the president, I sat right across from him in the White House, and he said that he wanted to pass the universal background check bill. Everyone saw it in the nation, and he said he wanted to pass this domestic violence bill. So a lot of this weekend is going to be holding people in Congress to what they said in their promises and holding the White House to their promises. And with that, we have this student who I know wants to answer part of this question of how the students can make a difference, and that's Robert Edwards from Washington, D.C., right here in Washington. Robert.
Good morning. My name is Robert Edwards. I'm from Washington, D.C. I attended Maya Angelou Public Charter School, and I'm a freshman now at Virginia State University. To answer your question, I think back then, 2 years ago, I live in a neighborhood where the violence was high, and me and a couple of other peers, I was the peer leader of my neighborhood, and me and a couple of other peers came together in a room and stated that we was having a conversation, and the conversation consisted of how we was tired of the violence and we want to change. So what we did was we all came together, we emailed the electors of Washington, D.C., and all came together into one big room in a meeting. And in the meeting, we stated that what we wanted to see change in our neighborhoods and also what we wanted to add in our neighborhoods to keep young kids safe. I knew it wasn't going to happen for my generation because I was going to school, but as long as it happened for the younger generations, and we had follow-ups with the people we spoke to. We didn't just have one meeting. We made sure we followed up with them. So that's how we could make change. Follow up with the people you're talking to and make sure that they hear you and listening, and make sure that they're going to do something for you.
Senator Nelson, since there was not any political will to get meaningful legislation before the march, Senator, do you believe there will be political will after the march now?
I believe, as Senator Klobuchar has stated, that we have already seen young people change public policy by standing up and speaking out. I think that is happening again. We've already seen it in the Florida legislature, albeit a step forward to get a 3-day waiting period for the purchase of an assault rifle. That was a significant step, although there's a long, long journey to go. And I do believe, yes, that we are seeing something that has changed, and the evidence of that is here this morning.
Senator Nelson, with respect to this change, you have plenty of students and plenty of parents who have heard the loudest cries out of MSC for a ban on assault-style weapons. And there are a lot of folks behind you who want that to happen. Can you talk about the likelihood of that, sir, in this political climate?
Well, you know, the political climate is so dominated by the NRA that it's going to be very difficult to get votes to do exactly what you said. And that's flying in the face of the facts. Talk to the trauma surgeons. They can save a life if it's a handgun bullet. But if the bullet is from an assault rifle, it is 3 times the velocity, and it hits with the energy 9 times the energy of a handgun bullet. And therefore, the trauma surgeons will tell you that it is very difficult to save the lives of someone that has been hit by one of these high-powered weapons. Now, that is a demonstrable fact.
Sir, let me ask you, should these folks behind you resign themselves to the notion that there will probably not be a ban on semi-automatic weapons?
Of course not. And that's what I said at the outset. These young people, their determination gives us more determination. Their hope gives us hope. But you have to realize the practicality of what is the political environment that we are dealing with.
And remember, we were just a few votes short of getting that universal background check bill passed. And with this new urgency and students talking to their reps, you could see a sea change on that more immediately. With assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, you could see that, if not in this year, in the next year. So I don't think these students are going to take no for an answer, right, you guys? Yeah. So they're not going to just give up. As our last speaker was talking about, it's follow-up. It's keep going, and keep pushing, and keep pushing. This march isn't the end. It's the beginning.
These students know that they're on the right side of history and don't view this as a question of what's going to happen in the next few months, but what change needs to happen. They know where this needs to go, and Dimitri actually, I think, wanted to respond to the question about why it's different this time.
I think I can speak for all the students here. We have finally succumbed to a reality in which we can no longer bear. The fact that many students across the nation have to wake up every day with a reminder in their head of what happens, or what if I go to school and never come home. That is a reality which none of us should be waking up to. And I think now we have galvanized the nation, students and parents from across the nation, and we've finally woken them up to this imminent problem and this epidemic of gun violence in America, which has been so prominent in so many other cities in the country, such as Chicago. And I think that we've all come together and we've all united, which is why the march in Washington tomorrow will be so effective, because it will show the true unity of the nation and the commonality of the goal that we have.
And Dimitri, from a student's perspective, with respect to that ban on assault-style weapons, what are your thoughts? Have you resigned yourself? Do you find that to be possible, likely, not likely? How would you characterize that?
I think that with the nation all standing behind us, I believe that if it's something that I personally believe that it's something that should happen. I don't believe that in the society that we live in, assault weapons are necessary. I was taught the Second Amendment, and I believe people should have handguns and hunting rifles if they want to. But assault rifles, they're meant to hunt people, and we don't need that, because people were hunted down the hallways of my school, and that's not okay.
I understand your position with respect to legislation and the body. Do you find it possible, plausible? What do you think about it?
I believe it's definitely plausible if the legislators can reach across the aisle, as been previously stated many times, work together and create effective legislation, bipartisan legislation, and I think it's very, very possible.
Dimitri, what do you think of the president pledging his support? He's met with students, he's met with lawmakers like Congressman Joyce right behind you, yet he hasn't committed to going to any of these March for Our Lives events this weekend. In fact, he's not even going to be in Washington, he's going down to South Florida. Do you feel that his support has waned? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely believe that he has said that he was going to support our movement and then kind of went back on his promises. And I do believe that's not something that a leader of a nation should be doing, especially when it directly impacts the future of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then this one, Mark, and then.
Thank you.
Well, so Gabby and I got involved in this after the shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012. So since I think it's been about 5 years, it's a little bit of 2 steps forward, step and a half back sometimes. What Gabby and I are really excited about, we're going to have a lot of people here, and they want their voices heard. They're going to be here tomorrow to march, and it's a great group of students. But what's really exciting, they're not going to be students for very long. They're going to be voters. Here in November, a lot of these young people are going to be voting. And that is what is going to really make a difference. I mean, this election in November could turn out to be a referendum on what Congress collectively has not done on this issue for so many years. And when that happens, we're going to see some real change. So everything you mentioned out here, we can get those bills passed. We can get new laws to keep communities safer from gun violence, as long as these people agree that it's up to them to vote. And I think they're going to do that.
Someone over at women. Momentum after the march.
I think many people believe that the march is the finality of everything that we've been working towards ever since the attack at my school, the tragedy. But it's actually the beginning of the movement that we're starting, and showing the representatives in America and the government that we're not going to back down. How we plan on keeping the momentum is genuinely to
Corporal Julie Yingling, Public Information Officer for St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office. I'm here with Sheriff Tim Cameron. We are here with the Willie family, and we're here to address, they wish to speak with you regarding the status of their daughter, Jalen. At this time, I would like to introduce Melissa and Daniel Willie.
On Tuesday of this past week, our lives changed completely and totally forever. My daughter was hurt by a boy who shot her in the head and took everything from our lives that's different. It will be different forever. She was one of 9. She was the second oldest, and she was on her school swim team. We are grateful for the care that my daughter has gotten here and in St. Mary's and at the high school from the nurse there. As of now, Jalen, yes, that's my nose. As of now, Jalen is still on life support, but she will not make it. We will be taking her off life support this evening. She's brain dead, and has nothing, no life left in her. But I felt like as her mom that I needed to make that statement to everybody. And I'm sorry, my little guy is being loud. I felt like it was our place, mine and my husband, to make that statement. So that's what I wanted to do.
Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for respecting the family's wishes to take no comments. That will conclude it for tonight. Thank you very much.
So we're back inside the newsroom, guys, after replaying that heartbreaking press conference last night. I know one of our photogs, Will, was out there. He set up that microphone shot, and we heard from Jalen, Willie's mother.
Yeah.
She was eventually taken off life support last night.
Which was so heartbreaking for me to see. I saw it all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, and that just hit the heart to say, wow, she's basically gone, you know, from this horrible tragedy that spawned. When was it? Wednesday?
It was Tuesday. I remember.
Gosh, it's been a whirlwind of a week.
The breaking news. We have had such a weekend.
Yeah.
It's culminating, of course, tomorrow with the March for Our Lives, which is all in that same vein with gun violence and gun safety.
Yeah.
But just seeing her mother, I didn't actually realize she was one of 9.
I didn't either. I knew she had a lot of siblings, but I was thinking maybe 4, which is a lot, I feel now, but like 9 just kind of blew me out the water. And was she the oldest?
Second oldest, I think they said.
Second oldest.
And it's a brief remark, and introduced by the sheriff, of course. And this was in University of Maryland, Prince George's, and this was, of course, this all unfolded in St. Mary's County. She was shot in the head from this boy who they say they had some sort of relationship prior, and they haven't really enumerated on that. But it is really heartbreaking. We knew she was fighting for her life in critical care, and that ultimately they had to decide what to do there. So that is sort of a very sad conclusion to that story on Tuesday.
It's definitely hard to swallow, I think, just to see that that's how it essentially ended. It does hit the heart, because I think about it. I put myself in my mother's shoes, for
Yeah.
example, and I'm like, I can't even imagine. Because sometimes we talk about that, oh, make sure you put on your seatbelt, just, like the little mother, reminders. She's like, God forbid anything ever happens to
Yeah.
you. And then I'm like, I can't. And to see her poor face, you just feel this hurt coming from her. Like, you feel it and it resonates with you. So, my thoughts and, hearts are with their family, and kudos to everybody that's going out to the march. You guys are doing something awesome.
Totally. We've been playing out some of that this morning with some of the students who are in town already, gathering on Capitol Hill to talk with lawmakers and really set the stage for tomorrow, which is exciting.
Yeah, which you'll be covering.
Yes, we'll be covering it here in the studio at 10 a.m. All the way into the afternoon as it tapers off, and we'll get some of the best footage of everything, really, those aerial pictures of the march, some of the signs, and like I said, this is all in that same realm. There will be students, I'm sure, from Great Mills that will be there.
Oh, absolutely.
If you guys were on with us Tuesday for that coverage, it was just such a whirlwind of a day.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
And I think the only good thing from all of this is the 14-year-old boy who was actually shot in the leg was released, I think, yesterday.
Okay.
And
was it Desmond?
Yes, Desmond.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing, because as social media, producers, we have to also kind of dig through the deep web, and I do remember encountering some of his family members on there and them sending out their thoughts, asking people, please, keep Desmond in your prayers. And it's just something hard to see, and like I said, it's just hard to swallow when you see something like this basically right in our backyards going down, and you're here, you're like, okay, what can we do? What can we report out to you people and let you guys know?
Right.
So,
we were really stalled there for a while because a lot of information wasn't clarified.
Exactly.
We weren't sure what exactly was meant to be out there, so it took a while to kind of know, and we're still, there's still more details to come out from that shooting.
I think there's still a lot of ground that needs to be covered. I feel like people are very, very interested in knowing like the motive of the whole, situation and how it panned out. What relationship was it? Was it, an abusive one previously? Because I feel like that's something that I kept seeing around social media. People were commenting saying it was probably an abusive one, just judging from how it ended horribly. So I guess we'll see in the coming weeks.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
We'll see what happens as a result of this march tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's going to be a big statement. More than 500,000 high school students they think will be coming in.
That's a lot of students.
A lot of them are already here, and we've been tracking them this morning. So if you're on with us now, just note that we will be covering that march tomorrow. Special Saturday digital stream for you guys, both on our YouTube channel right here and on our Facebook page. So you can join us both places.
Yeah. And if you guys want some cool pictures of the actual on-site scene, Instagram, Snapchat, that'll be covered too. We're having our reporters out there, and they'll be sending a lot of content. So,
live tweeting from inside.
Live tweeting from inside, everything as it unfolds and goes down.
Yeah. So that is all to come, guys. For now, guys, we're live in the DC Newsroom. We're going to take a short break and give you a little shot of the Capitol Dome, where all this is kind of going on. The march actually does kind of lead up to the Capitol Dome itself, and this is exactly where some of the lawmakers were speaking their truths about this, and some of the students were speaking out, as we just showed you in that video right before this Jalen Willie family video.
Yeah.
So here's a shot of the Capitol, guys, on this cold day. We'll be back in a little bit.
BRB.
Guys, thanks for being patient with us. We're back in studio here with some Toy Story goodies. Do you guys remember Disney on Ice? Well, I guess it's coming back and they're promoting some stuff. So we got some stuff in our newsroom. So giddy up to you, right, Raisa?
Giddy up. The name of the horse. I love him so much,
what is
but I
name?
forgot.
I forget. If you guys know, let us know.
Comment, please, because
I want to say this is really cool. Sometimes we do get cool promo materials, and we play with it. And
yeah.
We throw it around.
Guys, I really need to know the name because I think I'm getting anxious now. I need to know the name of this horse. What was his name? Please comment.
I'm gonna wear it on the side. I'm gonna hope you guys like it.
Oh, look at you, cute little cowgirl.
Meanwhile, guys, in serious news, we are just getting a note on our Fox Box that President Trump is coming up with a special unplanned news conference or presser inside the White House. We were hearing word of that. We're not quite sure what it's about. But we're going to look into that.
Happen, right?
Right, and it's coming up shortly at 1. It's just about 1 now. So we'll wait for that to come up, and then we'll bring that to you guys live. But other than that, kind of rolling along with today's stories. And speaking of horses, guys, there was a baby Clydesdale born.
And it's so cute.
It's adorable. Part of the new Budweiser clan now, and we have a couple cool stories for you in today's top stories. So check these out, then we'll bring you into the White House.
This Clydesdale farm.
There's none of them that are exactly the same. And no birth, even though it went spot on, is not the same as any other birth. It's all its own thing. This is where they're born. This is the starting place of the Budweiser Clydesdales.
This baby was born Sunday night at 7:30. Just 18 hours later, standing about 3.5 feet tall and weighing 170 pounds, this unnamed Clydesdale is calling Warm Springs Ranch home. We're on an exclusive tour at this facility near Boonville, Missouri, celebrating its 10th anniversary.
They carry him 11 months, and last night we had a newborn little perfect colt, big, strong. Then he'll go to Grant's farm, where he'll spend about the next 2.5 years doing the same things. A lot of bathing, washing legs, the things that he'll be done to him for his entire life. Clipping and all that stuff and the grooming. So then when he's 3. He'll go to Merrimack, New Hampshire, which is our training facility.
On our Monday afternoon visit to the 300-acre facility, there were more than 70 Clydesdales calling Warm Springs Ranch home. But the buzz around the barn was all about the new colt being welcomed into the King of Beers family.
You're walking through the barn right where we work every day. You're seeing the babies. I mean, there's nowhere else you're going to see the newborn babies but Warm Springs Ranch.
In Boonville, Missouri, Patrick Clark, News 11.
Tucked away in the corner of Capitol Hill's Cupcake Royale, these high schoolers are getting ready to send a message.
Gun violence is something that impacts our lives, and that we're no longer going to wait for adults to take action on it.
The adults have had their chance. They've had so many chances to make the change that we need, and they're not doing it.
Amelia Allard, along with Rhiannon Resurrectnum, co-founded Seattle's March for Our Lives, part of a nationwide student-led movement sparked by the school massacre in Parkland, Florida.
My first reaction was just of, I guess, disappointment that it was happening again. And I think after I heard more about the deaths and the circumstances, then I gradually became more angry at the fact that it happened.
After hearing Parkland students rise up to organize a nationwide rally, Rhiannon wanted to do her part here at home.
When I went on Facebook, I didn't see anything for it yet, so I decided to make a page, and that's kind of how I ended up here.
Through social media, she met Amelia, who had the same thought, and the same day had created a Facebook page. The two merged, and now more than 10,000 people say they're attending Saturday's rally. It's social media that helped fuel a movement and connect students from different schools all over the region.
We need someone to hold those time cards.
Those who can't make it to meetings are on video. Those who can are making signs. For both Amelia and Rhiannon, one driving force is behind their motivation to make a difference. Each has a little sister she hopes to protect.
I just needed to know, I guess, for myself that I had done everything I could for Charlotte and those other kids if this were to happen.
The change they seek, raising the age minimum for purchasing firearms and banning assault weapons.
Even though some of us can't vote yet, we're still going to hold our officials accountable because they still represent us and they should still be protecting our lives.
is the outcry of a very challenged young man.
And now, investigators in Austin have the challenge of analyzing the confession of a killer as they pore over Mark Condit's final words and hope to determine why the unemployed college dropout became a deadly serial bomber.
He does not at all mention anything about terrorism, nor does he mention anything about hate.
But in that 25-minute confession recorded on his phone, the 23-year-old Condit described in detail the explosives he made at his home.
The suspect describes the 6 bombs that he constructed with a level of specificity that he identified the differences among those 6 bombs. We have told you all along that they all had similarities, which they did as far as specific components, but there were also differences between them.
While Condit apparently didn't explain how or why he chose his targets, House Homeland Security Chairman Michael McCall says the man described as quiet and socially awkward had a hit list.
He had a target list of future targets, residences, addresses that we found.
As for Condit's family members and what they knew, his aunt says they had no idea of his darkness.
He was a great kid. He was smart, he was loving, he was kind. I have no idea who this person is.
Federal agents have concluded their investigation at the suspect's house right back here, and the road has been reopened to residents finally. They have collected quite a bit of evidence, which investigators say includes a cache of bomb-making materials and computers and hard drives that could prove beneficial in the investigation. Now the house just boarded up. It's the latest from Pflugerville, Texas. Casey Stiegel, Fox News.
If you have been affected by gun violence, please raise your hand to honor those you have lost.
Over 500,000 students and their supporters are heading for Washington, all to take part in Saturday's March for Our Lives, a protest against gun violence coming after the fatal shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School. On Thursday, students from Parkland, Florida, taking a stand with those from Washington to call for an end to the violence.
We have been trying to get government officials to hear our voice, but because we live in a low-income area and we live in D.C. where we're not represented by anybody, they feel as though, oh, our voices shouldn't be heard.
The event following a national school walkout last week. That protest seeing thousands of students participate.
We together as Americans, regardless of whether or not you've been affected, regardless of what your race is, regardless of your ethnicity or religion, we must stand up together.
Officials saying the demonstration is shaping up to be one of the largest youth protests in decades.
Not only am I a different person, but I was robbed of my innocence. I no longer get to go home and just be a normal kid.
Saturday's march is scheduled to start at noon on the National Mall. Similar rallies are also scheduled to take place across the country. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
She went into Omar's room and he wasn't responding to her.
Spilled Milk is the story of best friends Omar Beach and Ja'Kai Mickelson, one living with sickle cell disease.
The last thing I want is pity or like sadness and stuff like that, you know.
The other hoping to capture his friend's story.
Had no idea what I was getting myself into, by the way.
When they met at their San Diego high school back in the early 90s, Omar didn't talk much about his diagnosis.
I kept most people at sort of an arm's length.
A decade later, when Omar moved to Georgia to live with his mother, Ja'Kai quit his job in LA and followed his friend, convincing a reluctant Omar to let him document his sickle cell story on camera.
It was almost like an out of sight, out of mind thing. Like, oh, Omar's in the hospital, but he'll be back. And it was just the rhythm we got into. But throughout this process, it's been like, Omar's in the hospital, and I'm there with him, and this is excruciating.
Percocet. In one scene of the film, Omar shows all of the medications that he's taking. In another, he's in the ER, shaking, in a pain crisis.
It does something to you to see your adult son crying in pain. And there is nothing you can do.
It took time for both men to get used to the camera between them.
It's an interesting sort of dichotomy because on one hand, my best friend is there, so therefore like I have some sort of comfort level, but then at the same time, a photographer was there.
Like, my instinct is, like, I want to put this camera down and go comfort him. But the reality was that's some of the most powerful footage that we got.
The day of the film's premiere, Omar lands in the ICU in a medically induced coma with deadly sepsis.
They got all this crazy equipment, and he's got the tubes hooked up. We prayed for Omar over his bed.
Omar pulled through, and a few months later, at a surprise 40th birthday party, his family and friends gathered from across the country to screen this film that he says Jakai got right.
I think it's great. I think Jakai made something amazing.
Beth Galvin, Fox News.
All right, guys, and that's the latest that we have on some of our top stories from inside the newsroom today. But we're actually just getting word that President Trump, after threatening to veto the omnibus spending bill that will help avoid the government shutdown this weekend, is actually in line to sign it. And we have a live video look inside that room right now where he is about to do that. We're going to take you inside there and wait for him to come out, sign it, and give his remarks on this bill. We weren't anticipating this sort of breaking information or video from the president today, but now that we have it in, we want to bring you the latest from the White House. So we were reading that the White House press briefing was also slated to start around this time. My guess is that they're either pushing it back or changing that in some way so that the president can follow through with this. And then we'll take you over there as well if Sarah Sanders does, in fact, brief the media later on in the day. But waiting here right now for the president coming up. All right, guys, while we keep an eye on that room in the White House where President Trump is supposedly coming out to sign that omnibus spending bill after threatening or considering to veto it due to concerns about DACA. Sounds like he will be coming out to sign that. They're prepping that stage right now for him to make some brief remarks on it. But I don't know if anybody of you guys caught the Generation Next Youth Empowerment Summit. Took place yesterday, and there was a panel discussion, and President Trump had a few words that we were not able to stream to you guys yesterday on our stream, our digital coverage. So we'll take a double box here of the White House as we wait for the president to come out and make some remarks, and then also listen to some of his words yesterday at this Generation Next Summit.
This is for Obamacare, where you have the privilege of paying a lot of money so that you don't have to buy bad health care, okay? And we got it knocked out. That was a big thing. And Anwar, we have that approved, which is tremendous in terms of one of the great energy reservoirs in the world. And they've been working on it. Reagan tried, Bush tried, every president was trying to get it approved. And we got it approved. And that was part of our bill. And then, of course, we have the tremendous tax cuts for people, and I guess if you think about it, millennials starting out, you have a tremendous advantage now over what you had. You're going to pay less taxes, you have far more incentive, you're going to have a lot more money left in your paycheck to spend, and that's part of the beauty. And we're seeing it, and we're seeing the numbers, and you know, we were at about 1.2% GDP. We've now hit 3 and another 3 and a 3.2. And we'll see what this next quarter is. That could be a good quarter. Our businesses are flourishing. Jobs are now, people are going to have choice, and it's choice of jobs. You know, before if they got one job, they'd stay there even if they didn't like it because they had no alternative. Now people are going out and they're looking at 5, 6, 7 jobs, and they're making a choice. So that really works out. But young people coming out of college, coming out of even high school, we're trying a very big push for vocational schools. I like the name vocational school, where somebody's good at fixing motors. I remember I'd be in school, in lower schools, and I'd be doing a test, and there'd be somebody on my right who was not too good. This was not a great student. This was not going to be Einstein academically, okay? And yet that person could fix an engine or a motor. So he was incredible, blindfolded. And by the way, that's what he liked. And that's probably, I don't know, we lost track. That's probably what he ended up doing. But he had a great ability at that, far greater than me or far greater than other people. But he'll never be a student, nor did he want that kind of learning, that kind of...
Okay, so you just got a 2-minute warning to the president. 2-minute warning to the president.
A lot of times community colleges. I don't think it's an accurate definition. We're having a lot of companies come into the United States. We need workers. And by the way, illegal immigration, which will be probably one part of a question, but I'll give you the answer right now. We want people to come into our country, but we want them to come in based on merit, because we're going to need these people, because we have tremendous numbers of companies coming in, whether it's Chrysler leaving Mexico and coming into Michigan, or Foxconn is going to open up a tremendous place in Wisconsin, and we're very proud of that, because that was a deal that nobody even thought was happening or could happen. Apple, they make a lot of the Apple products. Apple is taking $350 billion, and they're coming into our country with building here. And I said to Tim Cook a long time ago, Tim, it's wonderful, Apple, it's nice, but we want you to build the places here. And he said, because of our tax, because of what we've done, they're actually bringing in about $240 billion, but they're going to be investing $350 billion on new plants and a tremendous campus and lots of other things. So it's very exciting, and very exciting for millennials, very, very exciting for jobs.
Absolutely, and black youth unemployment at an all-time low, Latino youth unemployment at an all-time low.
That's all-time low black unemployment. I'm very proud of that. And Hispanic unemployment, all-time low. Women unemployment, the lowest in 18 years. We're doing great. We're really doing great. And I really believe that, I don't want to sound braggadocious, but I think that there's never been an administration that's done as much as we've done in the first year. You know, if you look at regulations, forget about tax. I think, thank you very much, everybody. We have a lot of good news to report. Some tremendous trade deals are being made with various countries. We're negotiating very long, very hard, but very quickly. And the deal with South Korea is, according to Secretary Ross and Bob Lighthizer, is very close to being finished. And we're going to have a wonderful deal with a wonderful ally. We're getting very close to it. It was a deal that was causing a lot of problems for our country in terms of employment and in terms of lots of other things. I might ask Secretary Ross to just say a few words about that, and then we're going to get on to this ridiculous situation that took place over the last week. So, Secretary Ross.
Thank you, Mr. President. We believe we are relatively close to a pretty comprehensive resolution with the South Korean government. It will encompass, if it goes through, both the 232s and broader trade issues. And we hope by sometime next week to be able to have a real announcement.
Thank you very much, Wilbur. I appreciate it. The last time we negotiated something like this, and as you know, it's always been a problem for our country. They get together and they create a series of documents that nobody's been able to read because it was just done. Now, you tell me who can read that quickly. It takes a long time to read it. For the last 8 years, deep defense cuts have undermined our national security. Howled our, and they just, if you look at what's taken out, they've hallowed our readiness as a military unit and put America at really grave risk. My highest duty is to keep America safe. Nothing more important. The omnibus bill reverses this dangerous defense. As crazy as it's been, as difficult as it's been, as much opposition to the military as we've had from the Democrats, and it has been tremendous. I try to explain to them, you know, the military is for Republicans and Democrats and everybody else. It's for everybody. But we have tremendous opposition to creating really what will be by far the strongest military that we've ever had. We've had that from the Democrats. So if we take something for the military, they want something for, in many cases, things that are really a wasted sum of money. It's not right, and it's very bad for our country. We're looking to do funding for our final fight in certain areas. As you know, we've gotten just about 100% of our land back from ISIS. We have troop increases necessary to accomplish what we have to do, and we have, very importantly, a pay increase for our troops. And this will be actually the largest pay increase for our incredible people in over a decade. It increases total defense spending by more than $60 billion from last year and funds the addition of critically needed ships, planes, helicopters, tanks, and submarines. We have submarines being built, the likes of which there's nothing anywhere in the world like the submarines we build. Our military equipment is the best equipment in the world. And one of the things you saw 2 days ago with Saudi Arabia and with other countries, Saudi Arabia, as an example, is buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of our equipment. And we're getting very fast approvals on that. Therefore, as a matter of national security, I've signed this omnibus budget bill. There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced. If we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever. President Obama signed one that was actually larger, which I'm sure he wasn't too happy with either. But in this case, it became so big because we need to take care of our military. And because the Democrats, who don't believe in that, added things that they wanted in order to get their votes. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule and go to 51 votes in the Senate. And we're going to have really sustained, continued success. DACA recipients have been treated extremely badly by the Democrats. We wanted to include DACA. We wanted to have them in this bill. 800,000 people. And actually, it could even be more. And we wanted to include DACA in this bill. The Democrats would not do it. They would not do it. To prevent the omnibus situation from ever happening again, I'm calling on Congress to give me a line item veto for all government spending bills, and the Senate must end. They must end the filibuster rule and get down to work. We have to get a lot of great legislation approved, and without the filibuster rule, it'll happen just like magic. I want to address the situation on border security, which I call national defense. I call it stopping drugs from pouring across our border, and I call it illegal immigration. It's all of those things. But national defense is a very important two words, because by having a strong border system, including a wall, we are in a position militarily that is very advantageous. And before I get off of that subject, I'd like to ask Secretary Mattis to talk about what we've accomplished in terms of the military, because there has never been anything like we've been able to do. Our military is very depleted, but it's rapidly getting better. And in a short period of time, it will be stronger than it has ever been. So I'd like to ask Secretary Mattis to say a few words, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1790, in George Washington's first annual address to Congress, he stated, "To be prepared for war is one of the most effective means of preserving the peace." As the President noted, today we received the largest military budget in history, reversing many years of decline and unpredictable funding. And together, we are going to make our military stronger than ever. We in the military are humbled and grateful to the American people for their sacrifices on behalf of this funding. Now it's our responsibility in the military to spend every dollar wisely in order to keep the trust and the confidence of the American people and the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. The border, we've worked very hard on. We have a lot of, really by any standard a lot, but not by this standard, but we're going to make it go a long way. We have a lot of money coming to the border, and it will be coming over a period of time. We funded the initial down payment of $1.6 billion. We're going to be starting work literally on Monday on not only some new wall, not enough, but we're working on that very quickly, but also fixing existing walls and existing acceptable fences. There are some areas that you have to see through. You have to be able to see through the other side in order to see what's coming. And in many cases, it's not a pretty picture when you look, but you have to be able to see it. So we have $1.6 billion for the wall. That'll start immediately. This is a short-term funding, but it's immediate, starts immediately. And I'd like to ask Secretary Nielsen to say a few words about what we've done in terms of Homeland Security and what the bill does for Homeland Security. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We at the Department of Homeland Security work very closely with the Department of Defense, and we support this omnibus in the defense of our country. As the President has stated, under his leadership, he has delivered for the American people. This is a down payment on a border wall system. This is a 10% increase for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This will help us improve our aviation security with some badly needed upgrades, and we look forward to working with Congress on additional needs that we have. I will say, however, that it's unfortunate that Congress chose not to listen to the men and women of DHS and those on the front lines. They told us how to build the wall, where to build the wall, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that the wall is where we need it, how we need it, as the President described, and to make sure that it serves the American people and serves the security of this nation. We also will continue to work with Congress to close the dangerous loopholes that the President has mentioned many times, and to continue to increase our overall security. And finally, we thank those in Congress who support the Department of Homeland Security. I will continue to make myself available to them. I look forward to working with them, but we must fund the department and give it the tools and resources it needs to execute the mission the American people have asked us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So we have many elements in the bill that we wanted. Just to look at a few of them, we're providing $654.6 billion in total discretionary funding for defense. It's a record, all records for defense. There will be nobody that says that our military is going to be depleted like they've been saying over the last long period of time. Long period of time. Frankly, beyond President Obama. That won't be happening. We're spending a lot of money on nuclear, our nuclear systems, to upgrade, and in some cases brand new, whether it's submarines, nuclear submarines, and others. So we'll have by far the most powerful nuclear force on Earth, and it'll be absolutely in perfect shape and condition, and hopefully, praise be to God, we don't ever have to use it. But there will be nobody that's even close. This will give a substantial increase to people even outside of the military, but military related. Some of the many things that we're buying in the military, we have $23.8 billion to procure 34 Navy ships. Our Navy is at about the lowest point in terms of ships that it's been in over 100 years. And we're adding a significant number of extremely advanced vessels. $10.2 billion for 90 F-35 aircraft. That's the most sophisticated aircraft in the world, jet fighters. Total stealth. They're hard to find, they're hard to see, therefore they're hard to beat. It's very tough to beat a plane when you can't see it. This is the most advanced in the world. $10.2 billion for 90 F-35. We have $2.9 billion for 15 KC-46 tanker aircraft. The tanker aircraft is very important based on everything. It allows our planes to travel anywhere in the world without landing. $1.8 billion for 24 FA-18EF Super Hornet aircraft fighter jets. $1.7 billion for 10 PA, the Poseidons. Incredible stuff. $1.1 billion for 56 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters, most advanced helicopter in the world by far. Fighting machine. $1.1 billion for the upgrade of 85 Abrams tanks. $705 million for the cooperative programs that we're working with Israel and others on various missile defense systems. We're spending a lot of money on missile defense. We have a lot of offense that's been recently installed. We're spending tremendous money on missile defense. You understand what that means, everybody does. With what we have out there, missile defense is very, very important. We are funding our Border Patrol agents and our ICE agents. They are working long hours under tremendously dangerous conditions. We're adding large numbers of immigration judges, high-quality judges. Not only are we adding them in the district court level and the federal level of Court of Appeals, but we're adding immigration judges at a very high level. So, while we're very disappointed in the 1.3 trillion, nobody more disappointed than me because the number is so large, will start coming down. We had no choice but to fund our military because we have to have by far the strongest military in the world. And this will be by far the strongest military that we've ever had. So when you look at all of these pages, a lot of that is devoted, a lot, to the military. I just want to thank members of Congress for working so hard. While we can be disappointed in some ways, we have to also know that there are a lot of strings pulling everybody in different directions. The Republican senators, the Republican congressmen and women have been steadfast on their fight for the border and steadfast for their fight on the military. We're also spending $6 billion on, as you know, various forms of drug control, helping people that are addicted. It's a terrible problem, but this will be a record. We'll be suing certain drug companies for what they've done with the opioids, and we'll be bringing the suits at a federal level. The level of drugs that are being put out there and the power of this addiction is hard to believe. People go to the hospital for a period of a week and they come out, they're drug addicts. There has to be a better way. Doctors are way down now in their orders of the opioids, way down. It's a great thing. We're also looking for, in our research funds, we're looking for a medicine that can stop the pain without the addiction so that people aren't going to become addicted to these incredible drugs. So that's part of what we have. We're going to have $6 billion in having to do with opioids and other problems that this country, and in fact the world, is having with drugs. So we're extremely proud of what we've been able to do when it comes to our military. Our military will be far superior than to any military anywhere in the world. That's very important for us. You see the players out there. You see what we're dealing with. We are very happy with what's happened with opioids. We're very happy with what's happened with certain elements of the border. Not happy with $1.6 billion, but it does start the wall, and we will make that $1.6 billion go very, very far. It's going to go very far. I can tell you this, and I say this to DACA recipients, that the Republicans are with you. They want to get your situation taken care of. The Democrats fought us. They just fought every single inch of the way. They did not want DACA in this bill. And as you know, DACA is also tied to the wall for the major funding, the $25 billion for wall and other things. So I think that'll be coming up very soon. But I do want the Hispanic community to know and DACA recipients to know that Republicans are much more on your side than the Democrats, who are using you for their own purposes. With that being said, I just want to thank everybody for being here. We're very proud of many of the items that we've been able to get. We're very disappointed that in order to fund the military, we had to give up things where we consider, in many cases, them to be bad or them to be a waste of money. But that's the way, unfortunately, right now the system works. But we have a great country. We are going to have the greatest military we've ever had, and lots of good things are happening. The trade situation we'll be talking about next week. We have many trade deals, not only the deal being made on South Korea, which looks like it's very close to being finalized, but many other countries are now negotiating fair trade deals with us. So we'll be rolling them out as you see them. And part of the reason, frankly, that we're able to do that is the fact that we have the tariffs on steel and the tariffs on aluminum, because it showed how unfair some of these trade deals that have been in existence for many years, how unfair they've been. So it'll be great for our country, and frankly, it'll also be great for other countries. And it will be fair, and it will be reciprocal. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Well, you'll figure it out in about 20 minutes after you look at it. Okay? We're going to figure it out. You're going to figure that out. We looked at it a veto. I looked very seriously at the veto. I was thinking about doing the veto, but because of the incredible gains that we've been able to make for the military, that overrode any of our thinking.
How concerned are you about the impact of the tariffs on the stock market?
Well, I think the stock market's going to be great. I mean, look, the stock market's way up. When I came into office, the stock market was from a different planet. It's way up. China is going to end up treating us fairly. For many years, they had free rein. They don't have free rein anymore. We're very friendly with China. We have great relationships with China. And look, it's time. It's time. Last year, we lost $500 billion on trade with China. We can't let that happen. Thank you all very much.
Secretary Schultz, Mr. President, we've been lying about the affairs.
All right, guys. Well, it seems like with some reluctance, President Trump saying that he doesn't want to, but will sign that spending bill, $1.3 trillion spending bill, after he tweeted that he was considering a veto of it in his Twitter account. But anyway, guys, we're going to come back into the newsroom here and just let you wrap up on today's information here, today's news. We're going to continue on with our digital coverage, of course, tomorrow with the March for Our Lives at 10 a.m. That's what we've been talking about for a number of days. I'm going to be right here in the hot seat here with Gary McGrady and some other producers working in tandem to work on just bringing you the best digital coverage that we can get of that march tomorrow. It's going to include reporters who are down there on Pennsylvania Avenue, where they're going to be stationed at the places that have free food, the places that the kids are holding signs, and the Capitol building, of course. So lots of coverage for you tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in here on YouTube. We can also catch it on our Facebook page. We're going to be live tweeting, pushing out some Instagram posts, and all sorts of digital engagement for you guys tomorrow. So with that, thank you for hanging out with us today. I know it was kind of a rocky kind of start and slower news day, but we had a little bit of politics to share with you, and now we have some good news going into the weekend. So we'll catch you tomorrow for the march. Take care, guys. We'll leave you with the Capitol Dome, and join me again tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll be up with a bunch of coverage of these students, the Parkland students, many of the survivors who have flown up already today, and then many high school students from around the nation who've also descended on DC for this march. So we'll catch you tomorrow, guys. Take care.